Hi, and welcome to Straight to the Points. I'm your host, Courtney. I'm here to help you take your family on amazing vacations for almost free with the help of credit card points and miles. I'm a mom and primary care physician, and I believe that travel is an important way to restore, connect, and celebrate. This podcast is designed for busy people who want to learn how to take unforgettable trips with minimal out-of-pocket cost and don't want to devote a ton of time to figuring out the world of points and miles. I'll get you your first trip booked in just a few months. Let's get straight to the points. Hi, and welcome to Straight to the Points. Today we're talking about how earning free travel on points and miles impacts our credit scores. This is one of the most common questions that I get when people are interested in starting this hobby. They always ask inevitably, but won't this ruin my credit score? And while it is true that you should have decent credit and your finances generally in order to get started with credit card points and miles, it's also true that this hobby does not hurt your credit score in general. In fact, since I have started using credit card points and miles, I've actually seen my credit score improve pretty significantly in the past 2 years since I've been doing this. You might be wondering how that's possible. So let's break down how credit scores are actually calculated and then apply that knowledge to how using credit cards to earn free travel might help improve your credit score. There are 5 components that are used to make up your credit score. These are payment history, credit utilization, credit age or history, account mix, and account inquiries. Each of these makes up a portion of your credit score, and they're not weighted equally, which most people don't know. Let's talk about payment history. This is the biggest component of your credit score. It makes up about 35% of the credit score in total. This is whether you make your payments on time and you're paying at least the minimum balance each month on time. How late payments are made is taken into account. So payments that are a couple of days late versus over 30 days late are weighted differently. And things like bankruptcies, foreclosures are included in this as well. And this includes credit cards, but also things like your mortgage, your car payment, student loans, all of those things are taken into account. So that's 35% of your credit score. This is why it's really important if you are planning to do this hobby that you are able to make the full payments on your credit cards, pay off that full balance every month, because that's going to give you the best payment history score if every single month you're paying off those full balances on time. The next component is credit utilization, and this also makes up a really big portion of your credit score. It makes up 30% of the credit score overall. So this is a really important portion of the credit score. This basically takes into account how much of your available credit you are utilizing at a given time. And so this is one of the parts of the credit score that's kind of constantly moving and changing based on how much credit you have extended to you, and then how much of that you are actually utilizing. If you have, say, 5 credit cards and each of them has a $10,000 limit, that would be $50,000 of credit extended to you. Now, the credit utilization is going to look at what percentage of that $50,000 you actually have as a balance ongoing. And so this goes into, again, paying off the full balance each month so that you are not utilizing a large proportion of the credit extended to you at any given time. This is one of the places where the points and miles hobby actually helps your credit score and has helped my credit score personally, because every time you open a new credit card, you have more credit extended to you. Now I open a new Chase card and they give me a $10,000 limit. That's $10,000 more dollars that I have for available credit. That's the denominator in that equation, the percentage that you're using. And I'm still planning on spending about the same amount of money every month. My spending patterns don't change at all when I get a new credit card. And so each time I open a card, I have more credit extended to me, and that percentage of how much I'm utilizing of the available credit tends to go down as I open more cards. Other things will also impact this, of course. Again, things like your car payment, student loans, other credit extended to you as well. But in general, when you're using points and miles to travel and you're opening multiple credit cards in a responsible way over a period of time, and if you're continuing your regular spending patterns, you're really improving your credit score over time because you're increasing the amount of credit that is extended to you. The next component in calculating your credit score is credit age or history. This is one of the components that it's harder to change quickly because it really is looking at how long are your oldest accounts. Do you have an established history of having credit extended to you? So in this case, it's really helpful to keep your older accounts open. For example, I've got a Discover credit card that's a cashback card. And I used to use that for essentially all of my spending. And I've had that since I was in college, since well before I was involved in points and miles. I really don't use that card regularly anymore because I'm not interested in the cash back. I'm more interested in earning points. I get more value for my points than I would from a cashback card. But that card will always remain open. And that's because when my credit age or history is calculated, it's looking at the furthest back card. And so I will continue to keep that card open because that sort of dates my history back early. This is something to take into account for your children once they're getting old enough to use credit cards in a responsible way. I plan on getting my children or helping them get credit cards as soon as they're able so that they can learn how to use credit cards responsibly and that it can establish that credit age or history starting at an earlier date. You would then keep those oldest accounts open regardless of what other changes you might make to your credit card mix after that. One of the topics that comes up in points and miles is what to do with all of these credit cards once you've opened them. And it's going to depend on the card, when you've opened it, what use you can get out of that card in terms of credit or spending bonus categories. So it's a really personalized decision for each specific card, whether you want to keep or cancel it. But one of the things that comes into play when you're deciding whether to keep or cancel a card is that if it's one of your oldest cards, you really should keep that card or consider keeping that card to keep your credit age or history older and more established. The credit history makes up 15% of your credit score in total. The next piece of how the credit score is calculated is account mix. This accounts for only 10% of your overall credit score, and this basically looks at how diversified your credit is. So do you have all credit cards for the credit extended to you? Or is there a mortgage or student loans or car payments mixed in there? In general, they want to see a more diversified account that contains different types of credit extended to you to give you a higher score. Again, this doesn't really make up a big portion of your credit score, and I wouldn't stress about this. Certainly you wouldn't want to purposefully have different types of credit extended to you that you're paying on or accruing interest on if you don't need to. So if you're in a position where you can pay off your car early or pay off your mortgage early and you want to, then I don't recommend changing your behavior around those things for the sake of diversifying your credit for the credit score. Of course, there are lots of reasons that you may or may not want to do those things, but in terms of credit score, I basically wouldn't suggest making any changes to your strategy based on the account mix piece of the credit score, which again makes up only 10% of the credit score in total. The final portion of your credit score calculation is account inquiries. This accounts for 10% of your overall credit score. So overall, a relatively low percentage of how much this impacts the score. This is what people are always worried about when they're thinking about the points and miles hobby hurting a credit score. And it's true. This is the part of the score that is negatively impacted by opening new credit cards or getting any new credit extended to you, like taking out a new car loan, for example. And your credit score will go down a little bit with each new credit card application and approval. So when you do get a new credit card, you will see typically a few point dip in the score. And that's because you've had a new account inquiry. And so your credit score will go down by a little bit. Because this only makes up 10% of the score, typically I don't see big changes to my credit score when I apply for a new credit card and get approved. Typically, it's a small dip of a few points, and then it actually raises after that because, again, going back to the credit utilization, if I open a new card and they extend me $10,000 in credit, that is added to the total credit available to me. And so when you're looking at that proportion of credit utilized, what your balance is on those accounts, divided by the total amount of credit extended, adding additional credit extended is going to overall help your score. So what I typically see with this in practice, if I'm following my score, is that in general, after opening a new card, the credit score will dip by a few points. And then a couple of months later, usually, is when I see the credit score typically go back to where it was, or usually up a little higher than it was before applying for that new account. So while it is absolutely true that your credit score is harmed a little bit by applying for a new credit card, in reality, that does seem to overall impact your credit score in a positive way, as long as you are not changing the amount that you're spending drastically once you have more credit extended to you, that you're continuing to make those payments on time and in full, and that you keep your oldest accounts open. And so there's a lot of fear about this in the world of points and miles. A lot of people are resistant to trying this because they're afraid that their credit score will be negatively impacted. And that was one of the concerns I had when I was starting to read about this. But ultimately, once I learned more, I discovered that, okay, this actually makes sense that it would overall help your credit score by having more accounts opened. And I went into this, kind of dove right in when I started with credit card points and miles. But as I was doing this and opening new cards, I did watch my credit score very closely. And I did find exactly what I'm suggesting here, that, you would see those small dips with new account inquiries. And then once things kind of settled after a couple of months, you would see the credit score go up. Let's talk about how to utilize this knowledge to help up your game and your credit score with regards to earning free travel with points and miles. One of the biggest lessons here is that credit age or history is important, and that you really should try to keep your oldest lines of credit open. So if that's a situation like mine, where you have an old cashback card or an old credit card that doesn't have much in the way of benefits, you might still want to keep it open just so that you can keep that date of the oldest line of credit and have your credit history start then. If you happen to have a card that is a higher annual fee card as your first card, then you might want to consider downgrading that card to a different card type rather than canceling it, because that would keep that same initial date of opening as the timing for your credit history starting. So that's something to consider. You can generally downgrade a card by using the chat feature on the app for your credit card, or by calling customer service, which isn't fun, but worth it if it helps you keep your credit history better with that older credit age. One of the other things that can be helpful with this knowledge is remembering to pace your openings. This means that you don't want to just open multiple credit cards in a month and then see what happens. In general, credit card companies don't like it when you apply for too many cards close together, and your credit score won't like that either. What I talked about with the initial dip to your credit score with applying and getting approved for a card and then it improving is really dependent on the fact that you are pacing those openings and not opening a bunch of credit cards all at once. That would more negatively impact your credit score. If you are pacing your openings, you should see what I described, where the credit score dips a bit and then improves. In general, I recommend an absolute hard minimum of 30 days at least between credit card applications. And really closer to 90 days is probably better. I tend to be more conservative with my approach, and I in general won't apply for a new card if it's been within 90 days of my last application. I've broken this rule once because there was a situation where it had been more than 60 days since I last applied for a card, but not quite 90. There was a card with an elevated bonus, and I really wanted to take advantage of that while the bonus offer was higher, while I got a higher sign-in bonus and points. And so in that case, I did apply for a card earlier than the 90 days, but in general, I try to stick with 90 as the general rule of thumb, and absolutely not any sooner than every 30 days for pacing the applications. The other pearl to take away from this is something I've said a few times already, but repeating it again because it is so important, and that is paying off your full credit card balance on time every single month and doing the full payment for the full amount. And that's because that's better for your credit score, but also because if you are carrying a balance on your credit cards that you're using for points and miles earning, and you're paying interest on that balance every month, you're not earning free travel anymore, right? The cost of the interest that you're paying is offsetting what you're earning for free. And it's really not free if you're making those interest payments. And so it's so important as you go into this hobby that you maintain responsible spending, and that's how you can hack the system and earn a lot from this, is by spending a reasonable amount of money that you can afford on the cards and paying off that full balance every single month. The impact of my credit score was definitely something that I was worried about when I was considering getting into earning free travel on credit card points and miles. I did find, though, once I learned more about it and actually understood how these things are calculated, I felt a lot better about this. And I've definitely seen in practice that my credit score has improved. My credit score was decent when I started this hobby, and now it's over 800. I honestly didn't even know before I started this that a credit score could go over 800. I was pretty ignorant to all of this. I thought that it went up to 800 and stopped there. But now my score is over 800. And I've not changed anything about how I spend money or anything like that. Really, all I've done is just slowly open new credit cards about every 90 days and then put my normal spending on those cards. And that has resulted in an increase in my score. A lot of us grew up being taught that credit cards are inherently irresponsible, and that can make people shy away from wanting to use them to earn free travel, as I have done. I certainly, growing up, was taught that credit cards are not a responsible way to spend, and that really cash is the best way to buy things, and that doing anything else was inherently bad or not a good idea or not financially responsible. Certainly, credit cards can be used irresponsibly, just like cash can be used irresponsibly. And I think the wisdom that I'll give to my kids in this is not that credit cards are bad or irresponsible, but that there are ways to use credit cards so that you can get maximum benefit from them without having to pay interest, without it hurting your credit score overall. And I think that's an important lesson. I definitely grew up with more the David Ramsey type approach to finances preached to me. And there's a lot of merit in that, but also there is value in being able to utilize credit cards and earn free travel. I'm going on tons of vacations every year with my family, and it really is all because of credit card points and miles. And if I had stuck to that idea of fear that credit cards are bad, or that opening multiple credit cards would result in a problem with my credit score, then I might not have done this, and I would not be traveling like I have been. So I encourage you to think about how credit scores are calculated and decide for yourself if you think that this is a hobby that you would like to take on. I hope you find the same as I have, that as long as you are pacing your credit card openings and paying off those balances, that credit cards can really be a tool to earn free travel and actually improve your credit score. Thanks so much for joining me today, and happy traveling. This has been Straight to the Points. Thank you for listening to Straight to the Points. If you're looking for more tips and tricks or travel inspiration, you can find me on Instagram at straighttothepoints.podcast. If you have any questions about earning or using your points, send me an email. I might include your question on a future episode. You can reach me at straighttothepoints.podcast@gmail.com. Please also send me your points success stories. I would love to hear from you. If you are thinking about applying for a points earning credit card, I would appreciate you using my referral links to sign up. Head to straighttothepointspodcast.com and click on card referral links. If you are getting value from this podcast, I would be so happy if you would leave me a 5-star review and a comment wherever you listen. If you want to further support the podcast, click on support on the website main menu, where there is a link to my Buy Me a Coffee account where you can leave me a tip to help support the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Straight to the Points.